Just don't touch the table.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I'll be good.
All right. Makeshift camera stand.
Probably in her office. Here's the tripod.
Okay, I think we're good. All right. So we have another landscape committee meeting, and this is our third for the year, so the month of March. And first thing I want to just mention is that we're going to be moving to a quarterly landscape committee meeting schedule. So after this, we will go ahead and set that next committee meeting where we discuss all items underneath the umbrella of landscaping, irrigation, preserve, lakes and wetlands. And then in between, we can work to schedule seminars that have to do with maybe our preserve, anything that needs to be touched on or talked about for new projects, whatever that might be, we can do that in the interim. So that will be one of the main things that's changing. So to get started, I'll go ahead and call to order and start with our committee member roll call. So tonight it's just myself, Dan Dummin, and Tony Lobianco is here. Appreciate you guys joining me tonight. And we'll go ahead on to the completed projects that occurred between February and now. There are three. The first is that our board at the last board meeting had moved to accept Advanced Restoration Ecology and their proposal for our new preserve area cleanup and maintenance vendor. And the owner of that company is Drew Gatewood, who we will introduce to the community here, I think maybe the next week or so. There is a signed contract. I was able to confirm that, Dan. So we'll get that contract and we'll have it on record. We can review the details there with him. And next one is High Meadow hedges were actually reinstalled. I think the last time I touched on this, I wasn't sure if it had been done, but we did get the insurance reimbursement, and CPM went ahead and tackled that right away. So I have seen it and it looks great, and I look forward to seeing it kind of come full and grown.
Good. They're pretty mature.
Yeah, I think they were like 12 gallon.
Yeah, they're good.
So we got a nice size to match the one that was hanging off there on the right side. So it does look nice. The other item was we had completed our first quarter wet check with Doug Reed. And yeah. Okay, on to open issues.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go for it.
Did Doug have any issues with the wet check?
No, the only issue was that he had planned to get through Swallowtail, Silverwolf, and Key Deer, but because of the number of work orders that were open and the issues that he was dealing with, it delayed him getting to Key Deer. So this coming Saturday, he is actually back for another segment of the wet check, but it's going to be all Key Deer and Kingland. That was it. Okay, open issues. CPM, our landscaping company, they still need to refine their system for identifying homes that have opted out of services. There were a few issues that have shown up recently where a homeowner had opted out of a service, but there was confusion as to whether or not the crew knew about that. So we're working to kind of make that a better system, whether it's with cones or flags or whatever it is. Eliseo, our account manager with CPM, actually is aware of this. He's working to make that a better process. The other thing that we are going to work on with regards to that is to set some more clear parameters for CPM and what can be opted out of. I think we did that with Coastal, where you can opt out of some, but not piecemeal it in a way where if you were to say, for example, get fertilizer and weed control, like you don't want to have one and not the other in certain areas. So we were able to sort of clarify that a little bit with Coastal. We want to do the same thing with CPM, so that way people know it's all or nothing, or maybe there's an option for those who it's front or back or something like that. But we will work on that. There is an open proposal from CPM for common area tree trimming. They were the first ones that we asked for that particular project. We're going to continue to ask others, some of which we have on the list from the holiday tree trimming project we did last year. So we'll follow up with some of those other companies, see if we can get some bids. And yeah, the open proposal also for High Meadow berm enhancement. That is something we got from CPM. That's more of a long-term project, and so we're going to want to consider other companies for that as well, since it is more of an enhancement, kind of a design-based project, and it's going to be quite costly based on the length of our berm and the amount of plants that need to be replaced, but also how to really make that look nice for the long term. Okay, coastal pest control. They are back on site between March 20th and the 22nd. They're going to be doing perimeter and shrub insect control, micronutrient application, and turf fungicide spot treatment. All right. Then we have our pump house maintenance vendor. That's Sullivan Pump and Electric. So there's an update to what I put on this agenda. So we were originally going to get a second opinion from Hydrodynamic, who was the second tier company that we were looking at for a vendor to do maintenance and all that stuff. This was in particular for an open proposal to replace an old isolation valve in the pump house and also a faulty surge protector. But we were only going to get that second opinion because the total cost of this particular repair was quite expensive. I think the total was around $11,000. Yeah, and the bulk of that was in the actual labor. But actually, we received an email today that corrected that. There was a mistake in the actual proposal quoting. So it saved us about $8,000.
Is it how much?
$8,000.
You went from 11 to 3?
Three,
Oh,
two
whatever.
something. Yeah. Yeah. It was just a miscalculation, but they caught it. We're appreciative of that, and it makes a lot more sense now. It kind of froze us in our tracks there for a moment, but we're confident that they can take care of what needs to be taken care of, and at the cost that it is now, it makes a lot more sense. So we're probably going to end up just proceeding with them to get it done as it needs to be.
So we won't do the second bid.
Don't think we need to at this point. I mean, I did research when I saw the big number, and I was trying, like, almost kind of, what do you call it, like self-fulfilling prophecy, where I was making those numbers work to the best of my ability, but like even trying that, it was hard to do. I think it's much lower now, and it makes a lot more sense based on what I saw. And they've already done some great work with our pump, and they've been very clear about its current status. So they definitely know our pump well. Okay. All right, on to our newest preserve maintenance vendor, so Advanced Restoration Ecology. First announcement there is, so Dan, who is with us tonight, he is going to become the lead member for our committee regarding preserve maintenance. So Dan will get you connected with Drew Gatewood at ARE, and we'll start to kind of collect information from him regarding his start date, the scheduling, how he's going to tackle both the cleanup and the following maintenance phases. And we already have reached out to him to try and collect that information, so we'll loop you in, and we'll get clarity on all that so we can share with the community. And also we're going to request that he helps write up sort of an informational letter, email, so that we can send that out and everybody is aware of what they can expect when they are out in a preserve, uniforms that they're wearing, work that's being done, so you're not surprised by somebody wandering around your backyard.
There was, I'll mention it just because it came up this morning. There was a question about what time vendors can come in, and Courtney was saying, I guess the normal time is like 8 to something, but she was telling Chris today that vendors can come in at 7 if they want to come in at 7.
7 a.m.?
Yep.
Okay. That's good to know. I wonder if there is an official timeline for in and out.
I thought it was 8, but she said it's 7. Maybe it's because of
Okay.
change in timing or whatever. So I thought I'd mention that to you. I didn't put that in the notes.
Okay, cool. All right, lakes and wetland maintenance. So, as mentioned last meeting, we don't currently have enough bids from enough vendors to make a confident decision here. We're still being serviced by Solitude as they're kind of going through and completing their last contract with us. We had asked them to rebid for this because they did another walkthrough with new reps, new managers. There was a new discovery of a different waterway, so there were different things that were not already being incorporated and taken care of. We also have a different approach, being that our lakes are healthy, so we wanted to maybe continue to keep the lakes more natural, especially the ones that are more hidden, and then we can maybe spot treat the ones that are more home facing. So I think that changes a little bit of the workload, but they've yet to respond to that or given us a proposal yet, so we're not sure how motivated they are to rebid on it. Because of that, we're trying to get 1 or 2 more companies in. You had mentioned there was one that this past Tuesday.
Was it today?
Today they were here.
Today I met with Chris and Courtney, Aquatic Resource Technology.
Aquatic Resource Technology.
And he said he'll have a proposal to us by next week.
Great. So when we get that, I'll add that into the spreadsheet. And I think by that point we'll have at least 3, and we know what Solitude was charging for annual maintenance. So we can kind of use that as a reference point, considering they may not, decrease or increase their numbers. So having 4 of those, I think, would be enough for us to kind of check those references. I know you're already helping with those, calling on some of the references for these companies.
As soon as I get the information from Courtney, I'll start calling.
Okay, excellent. Okay, cool. All right, and then irrigation with Doug Reed. So as I mentioned, he was here last Saturday. He was able to complete Swallowtail and Silverwolf, and he'll be back this coming Saturday, March 16th, to cover all of Key Deer and Kingland Way. On that particular topic, a homeowner on Key Deer had reached out about whether or not wet checks were to review the level of saturation on the turf. I responded, this was on Facebook, that it is not their main focus. Actually, the checking of the sprinkler heads, the directions, things like that, that's more the main focus. But if a work order is placed, so anybody watching this, place your work order for irrigation checks or an assessment of the saturation levels on your property. And so when Doug comes out with his crew, he can actually take a look at that when he's doing the rest of the wet check. And that could be really useful for whoever is having those questions or concerns. The work order process, by the way, is working, and Tony is being a huge help with Courtney to assess those right now. We've got a list of open and closed work orders that we're looking at. We're going to make sure that work orders as a whole system functions really well, it's efficient, and that there are no work orders that slip through the cracks. So that's really important. All right, so on to new business. We'll start with common area mulching. Unless you guys have questions about the sort of open issues, anything that I just discussed.
Yeah, we can talk about work orders later.
Okay, cool. All right, so new business, common area mulching. So Greg Kelly, I've already been in conversation with him. He's going to help look at a couple of vendors. Courtney mentioned another one to me today. She's going to get in contact with them too. So we should have about 3, possibly 4 vendors to consider. The feedback I got from Courtney was that the blow-in style of mulching is the most cost-effective. I think Advanced Mulch, who was the vendor that CPM recommended, that's their approach, I believe. Also, the one that Courtney's going to reach out to, also theirs. So that's something to consider when looking at these other vendors.
So CPM doesn't do that particular function themselves?
Correct. CPM is not direct for mulching. They outsource that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and so the question came up also whether or not mulching our community is going to be a once a year or twice a year service. For this year, it's going to be once, so we're going to do it coming into maybe the middle of the year, and then what we'll look at is basically our budget and the quality of the mulching that we got from that vendor. We can assess that toward the end of the year, determine whether or not we have it in our budget to do it twice a year. Then we can do the first one at the beginning, second one towards maybe the end of the summer, and then that will be a biannual mulching. So we'll have to take a look at that later in the year, but for now it'll be a one-time service depending on the vendor that we use.
Suggestion, I know there was a lot of focus a couple of months ago. We heard from a number of residents about, okay, I get it, some of the stuff inside doesn't look perfect, but we really like the entrances to look good. Maybe we could have those done twice a year so they do look nice.
Oh, that's a good point. So the focal points are done twice a year, but
Yeah.
the rest of the sort of average areas, I guess the kind of interior areas,
Yeah,
are done once. All right, that's a good point. So do 4 entryways. Okay. Yeah, and then the other question too is like, all right, if we're gonna do this big project, there's gonna be a ton of mulch involved. If we're purchasing in bulk, would there possibly be discounts for any individual homes that want to get in on this using that vendor? I know it probably is gonna be an independent project, so each home is gonna be different based on their lot size, amount of mulch, but they might get quoted with a bit of a discount. Not sure, I don't wanna speculate too far on that, but having a vendor who we've chosen, knowing the project timeline and what's involved will give us more information on how they can accommodate each home. So we'll have to determine that as we get closer to the actual start of the project. But we are not looking to delay this much further, so we're already going to work towards finding that vendor. Okay, so I've already mentioned at the beginning the landscape committee meetings are going to move from monthly to quarterly. And I will work with Courtney to set that schedule so it can be expected, say every 3 months, which day, week, all of that good stuff. And we may end up just keeping it, the second Wednesday of that, say, third month, which has already been working, and we can just keep it like that. All right, common area tree trimming. So I mentioned that CPM already has an open proposal for that, and we want to now get some other proposals to compare and contrast. But in the meantime, we're going to request that CPM basically puts together a Google Earth map and highlights the areas that are going to be involved in that project. They did that for us on the High Meadows burn enhancement proposal, so we know they can do that, and it was actually very useful for us to see as a tool. So once we have that and we have the tree count, we can actually create a more specific RFP for these other vendors, and I think it will help kind of guide them and let us know, all right, this is really what is involved in this whole thing, and we can make adjustments where we need to. All right, and last 2 items here. We sent an email out to Austin Peak, who is going to be the expert, to come out and do a wildlife seminar for us. So life that's in our preserve, life around sort of Palm City area, Martin County, that exists, just to educate, very similar to what Lindy did for us in the preserves. He's more specific to the wildlife that exists out here. He was originally contacted because of the incident with the rattlesnake. We thought that he could help educate people about that particular reptile, being that there was a lot of energy that surrounded that circumstance. But also there are other animals that we have issues with. For example, raccoons turning over trash cans, getting in your garbage, all that good stuff. So if we can learn how to sort of protect against certain situations regarding the animals that are naturally around our homes, I think we'll all be better off for it. So Austin can help with that.
So is Austin Ducey associated with,
Yeah, I can't remember the organization he's with. It's the Wildlife Conservation Education.
so it's a governmental agency?
Yes.
that He's associated with?
Yeah. Once he confirms, I'll make a flyer. I'll announce his, position, his role in the county, and what he's going to be talking about.
This is gonna be an evening seminar.
Yes, and he's going to take over one of those second Wednesdays. So now that we're in quarterly, we have that open to us, and he can actually utilize the time better. We were going to try and fit it into one of our meetings, but he felt he was going to get everything out that he wanted to. So now he'll have more room to really kind of elaborate and actually also answer questions.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think the more we can communicate to the residents, they understand a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like my next question related to that is, we were talking about, we still have work order submissions for things where they don't fully understand how the process works. And I think coastal was one of the ones, the pest control
Right.
and you and I had spoken about maybe it's time to do that in detail because there's an increase in the number of work orders for pest control and fertilizing and so on.
Exactly. And I talked to Doug Reed, this afternoon about him coming back out to just, show face again, talk more about what he's doing with these wet checks. Maybe he can also give some advice for all those in terms of what they can be doing in the interim when he's not on site or he's not hitting their property, things they can look for, maybe how they can maybe adjust their timing regarding their sprinklers, the amount of sprinkler that occurs during their timeline, whatever that might be. Just whatever their problem is, they can make adjustments. They have the ability to do things and make changes, and he's really good at kind of helping with that stuff too. So, and we can also kind of batch them together. So maybe we can get 2 speakers in one night, just to make it more convenient. All right, and the last one, which we did touch on, is the work order review and processing. Tony, do you want to speak on that, or do you want?
I can talk a little bit. So
Just talk loudly enough so that people can hear you.
Sure. Last month we met for the first time to go through the work order process with Courtney and Eliseo and George to get an understanding of how it works, what was out there. There were a number of issues with the reports itself, which Courtney's trying to work through. We had a second meeting this past week, and we were able to filter out some of the carryover items that had not been updated in the system.
Right.
So we're now getting a better handle on the number of issues that are out there. It's just looking at the data from 2023. We didn't have a full year of information. They were not inputting data until mid-year, about June. During the June to December time period, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 157 work orders. Of those, probably, I would say, maybe a third of them took place in the fourth quarter, October through December. So it appeared that we were starting to see a decline in the number of inquiries from the residents because of the work that CPM was doing. Because the 2 biggest areas that account for the work order process are either landscaping or irrigation. So that seems to be working a little bit better. The number, was significantly reduced for the months of January and February. So it looks like we're going to see a significant reduction through the first half of this year, but it's early to tell because Courtney's still trying to work through documenting correctly some of the issues that were in last year that had carried over into this year. So I think come the next meeting, which will be in another 30 days, I should have a better handle on what and where needs to be addressed. I mean, what we're really looking for, at least at this point, unless we have other ideas, I'm just looking to see if there are trends in particular types of problems that homeowners are asking. We still have some questions where I think homeowners are expecting to submit a work order for private work to be done by the vendor, and we're trying to encourage them to deal directly with the vendor instead of having Courtney do it. a general comment about the process is that it's very manual. You can call, you can email, you can write, you can stop by and talk to Courtney, but all of it has to be input by her manually. She then prints out the work order and assigns it to CPM, Coastal, or George to take care of. And then they give it back to her, and she in turn updates the file. It's probably they had some issues last year where the follow-up didn't get back into the system, so there was oh gee, let's get this updated. I think they made an effort to make sure that everything that had been resolved was taken care of into the system. So we're still kind of learning the capabilities of the system. The core system is shared with other developments, so right now it's just, I think, a question of us becoming more familiar on what things can we do as a committee to help reduce the number of work orders or issues by dealing with the vendors. LSA was very, supportive and cooperative. He did follow up very quickly between the last meeting on some of the open items. George as well, some of them fall into his area initially. So I think the first 2 meetings have been productive, and I hope the next time we meet again as a group, maybe even before then, we'll have a better idea of what kind of issues, if there's some kind of theme, if you want to call it that, that's continuing on. Like, we had a problem for a period of time where the landscapers were not closing the gates in some of the residents' homes. That seems to have stopped. You mentioned something about, some of the expectations about, I want this portion of the service, not that portion. So I think we're working through that. So the good news is I think everybody's motivated to make it work.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Thank you for the update and all that information. Yeah. I also think that with our work order process, I think we talked about this last time, but it's a bit of a manual system.
It is.
Right?
It's very manual.
So I think it's good that you've gotten involved, and as a committee, we can support you and Courtney in reviewing this stuff and making sure that our vendors are keeping accountable to the timelines that they've kind of set for completing these work orders. And like you said, if LSA was motivated, it's probably not independent of us. He's probably motivated because Courtney's bringing his attention to these things regularly. But now that you're involved and we can take a closer look at these items, he'll be even more motivated.
I think just the process of everybody sitting together, whether it's George and Eliseo and Courtney, just having that communication all at the same time is going to be very productive. And at some point, it may involve Jim from Coastal, but right now I think it's a good start.
And you guys are doing this Tuesday? It's like a Tuesday morning
It's
huddle?
the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so like prior to...
I set it up prior to what would have been our normal meeting week.
Yeah, are you going to just keep it at monthly?
I think for now, we'll do one more and then see whether or not it really is productive to do it every month. But I do think there's a value in just showing up.
Yeah.
And having everybody talk about what's on the list.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anything from you, Dan?
No, I don't think so. I've got to get, I'm going to get a little more up to speed with the preserve situation, and hopefully be able to do that in the next, in the next week.
Okay.
Hey, do you think that there'd be a value, because that's another topic that's come up a few times about the preserve, about having them also speak to us at some point about one of the confusing items, I think, on occasion has been is who's responsible for maintaining overgrowth or whatever, from the preserve, and what they do and what they don't do. I think some of the other residents believe that preserve process involves this company taking care of the overgrowth, and that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like one of those responsibility sheets specifically for preserve maintenance. I mean, really, we can't touch the preserve. I mean, that's ultimately you're going into the preserve to at any point and you feel like you crossed that line, it's hands off. You can't touch it, you can't add anything to it, you can't plant anything in there, no swings, no toys, no nothing. We cannot do anything.
But you can go up to your property line, which raises the
Correct.
question about,
So that any encroaching preserve that goes over your property line, yes, you have free range to cut that back to the preserve line, right? It is our responsibility. So each homeowner is responsible for the encroaching preserve onto their property. Now, how you take care of that is up to you. So you can independently contract CPM to do that for you. Get your own private vendor, whoever it is, or just get out there yourself with a hedge trimmer and knock it back.
Yeah, I think you've commented on that before, but that it is the homeowner's responsibility to take care of any overgrowth that's encroaching on the property,
Yes.
as long as they don't, get into the preserve itself and create issues in that regard.
Exactly, and that was why initially I put together that little video on how to kind of measure your lot line, because I thought that would be the next big question is like, well, if I'm able to do that, how far can I go? And where is my exact lot line? And I think we determined that on average it really is to the fence line for the majority of homes. Every once in a while it might not be, but there's always a way to figure that out, and everybody should have a survey of their property, so you can go and look at that and it gives you the numbers there. But the reference that I put online, and I can always repost it with the information about this stuff for all those who need it. Plus, our property manager went out and bought a bunch of stakes to put in the ground, so you can measure it out. Literally take the stakes that were purchased, stick them in that place, and then hire your company, or now you know where to stop.
so we picked them up from Stacy or George, the stakes.
From Home Depot.
Oh, I thought she still had some.
I think she does.
I think she bought quite a few. I thought, my understanding was there were quite a few.
They got them from one of the home goods stores or something. But yeah. Okay. I think we covered everything. And one other thing on the topic of moving to quarterly, maybe some people might have a concern who actually do watch these videos and are actively kind of checking the weekly newsletters. But I'm going to make sure that weekly, I know that I do that with you guys, our committee, I bring it up to speed, I do a kind of an outline summary of where we're at and everything. I'm going to start copying that into our Facebook page, and Courtney does a pretty good job summarizing work that's being done, but I could always ask her if she wants to make an attachment, or maybe we find a link space on our website of, recent agenda or current projects or something like that. If anybody's curious, they can see where those are, but either way, we're going to continue with the sort of transparency and information that we have done since the beginning. So I think it's been useful. So that's it. I'll leave it there, and we'll call it.
Okay.